Hey there. Today we're going to talk about characterization. That is basically the way a writer reveals a character's personality and qualities in a text. And you can tell a lot from the way that a character is portrayed in a text. But first, let's talk about the methods of characterization. So basically, there are two methods of characterization: direct and indirect. Now, direct, also called telling, it's where the author is directly explaining the characteristics. And I'll use Little Red Riding Hood to give you some examples of these. And so when they start the story, it says, "Once upon a time, there was a dear little girl who was loved by everyone who looked at her." And so the author right there is basically just telling you what we should know about the character. She is dear and she was loved by everyone who looked at her. Indirect is just what it sounds like. It's not said straight out, but you can see it in a variety of ways. I also call it showing. You can tell it by the actions of the characters, how they look, what they're thinking, their speech, and what others say about them. So, first of all, actions, what the character does. An example of this would be with the wolf, and without saying a word, he went straight to the grandmother's bed and devoured her. From that action, we can tell that this wolf is possibly not the good guy. He's violent in some way. There's some other things we can possibly tell about him just from this description of his actions. Appearance. That's basically what the character is described as looking like. It could be the face, the body type, all sorts of different things. And with the wolf, we get this sentence: "There lay her grandmother with her cap pulled far over her face, looking very strange." Now, the grandmother in this case is, of course, the wolf. And the fact that she's looking very strange means that she's kind of deceptive in some way. There's some other things we can probably tell about this wolf just by the fact that she's wearing the grandma's clothing. And that Little Red Riding Hood, I guess there's some things we can tell about her too, that all she thought was that the grandmother looked strange and could tell she was actually a wolf. Also, the private thoughts of a character are a really great insight into the character. Um, a lot of times this is revealed in a play, in a soliloquy, where the actor stops the action and basically talks to himself aloud on stage. But in short stories and in longer fiction, and sometimes in poetry, you can actually hear that, depending on the point of view, what the character is thinking. And so here the wolf thought to himself, "What a tender young creature! She will be better to eat than the old woman. I must act craftily so as to catch both." Well, first we get to see that this wolf is actually likes to eat human beings, which tells us a little bit about him. And also, we get to see that maybe he's a little bit greedy and he's making a plan. Go back here. Next is showing. Through the characterization, when they're showing the speech, what the character says, how she or he says it. And this can tie into dialect, the type of words that the character uses. The diction and syntax are really significant here because it tells us a lot about the character. And so here you have the wolf talking to Little Red Riding Hood and saying, "See, Little Red Riding Hood, how pretty the flowers are about here. You walk gravely along as if you were going to school, while everything out here in the wood is merry." And so we're seeing some of the wolf's rhetorical techniques and what the wolf can do to convince Little Red Riding Hood. We're seeing more of his slyness of this wolf. Now, what others say about the character is also important. The public and private opinion of the character by others in the work. And we just so happen to have a huntsman's point of view in the story where he's talking to himself about the wolf. And he realizes that the wolf is hiding in the grandma's cabin and sees her. And he says, "Do I find you here, you old sinner? I have long sought you." And so we get the feeling that there is a kind of a long history with the huntsman and the wolf, and it's not a favorable one. Okay, and so those are the basic ways that you can, the things that you could tell about a character. And here are some questions that you can look at to, to think about. And I want you to be thinking about these while you're reading the text that we have planned for today, and try and figure out how are the characters physically described? What language does the author use to describe their actions? How do the characters talk? And think about names that are given to the characters too. We're going to be focusing on characters with this story, and these are some questions you can use to help you with that.